I have discovered the fastest AFK mass minion build for the Necromancer. You'll speed through dungeons while leveling up at the fastest pace. You'll be able to easily handle dungeons 10 to 20 levels higher than yourself while pretty much being invincible. With this build, I focus on speed, playing with just one hand, ease of use, and optimizing the leveling experience. So let's check this out. Okay, so first I'm going to show you clearing this dungeon, and with this build you'll be able to easily clear dungeons 10 to 20 levels higher than yourself. With this build you'll be able to pretty much use Blood Mist all the time, making you invincible for whole fights while your minions clear out the enemies. Now this build can even beat Uber Lilith, but it's designed for more speed rather than focusing on damage or defense. So this build is tailored for efficient dungeon farming and leveling. So you do want to adjust some skills and stats to optimize your build for facing Uber Lilith. Now while doing Hell Tides or farming Malignant Hearts, you can just move around and your minions and auto cast skills will do all the work for you, and you don't need to use a single skill. Now there will be certain items and stats you'll need in order for this build to work, and I'll highlight them while going over this build. But for the most part, you don't need every item I have in order to make this build work. If you're missing some items, it may just take a little bit longer to clear higher level nightmare dungeons. So starting with the Malignant Hearts. Now the Sacrilegious Malignant Heart and the Decrypted Aura Malignant Heart is required for this build to work. The Sacrilegious Malignant Heart makes that walking near corpse automatically activates an equipped corpse skill every second, dealing reduced damage. And the Decrypted Aura Malignant Heart allows you to gain an aura that automatically curses surrounding enemies with Decryptify for certain seconds. And with the level 5 Decrypt Aura Malignant Heart, you will always have the Decryptify aura because the 5 enemies near you is reduced to 0 enemies near you. This Malignant Heart is very important because it allows you to apply Decryptify automatically to enemies without wasting a skill slot, and the skill will also greatly reduce our other skills cooldown because of the skill Abhorrent Decryptify. Now you can easily grab these 2 Malignant Hearts right at the beginning of the game if you already completed the campaign. Now you may have to do a couple dungeon runs through the Malignant Tunnels to collect these Malignant Hearts, but the good news is that they're not too rare and you'll come across them quite frequently. Now the last Malignant Heart you'll want is the Barber Wrathful Malignant Heart, but this Malignant Heart is not needed in the early leveling phases. The Barber Wrathful Malignant Heart is just the best Malignant Heart in the game. It is overpowered and it can easily clear out a group of mobs with ease. Now the Barber Wrathful Malignant Heart is rare, so if you don't have it yet, you can use the Frozen Terror Malignant Heart or the Prudent Heart Malignant Heart in the meantime. So next, let's check out the skills. Now, of course, this is a mass minion build, so I have raised skeletons and golem, and our minions will help us tank damage while clearing out the enemies. The next skill, I have corpse tendrils, and this skill will pull and stun enemies while applying vulnerable to them. The next skill is blood mist. This skill will make us invincible, and with the other skills and stats I have equipped, you can pretty much use blood mist almost all the time. The next skill I have is corpse explosion. This skill will be our main damage dealing skill, and depending on the enemies you're fighting, you do want to manually activate your corpse explosion to clear out your enemies very quickly. The Sacrilegious Malignant Heart will reduce the damage of your corpse explosion if it is activated automatically. And the last skill I have is Bone Storm. This skill has good damage, and you will also receive damage reduction and increased critical strike chance. Okay, so next let's check out the skill tree. Now with this build, you're not going to use any basic skills. But let's say you died and you lost all your skeletal minions. What you can do really quickly is change one of your skills to decompose an enemy. And by the time your enemy dies by the decompose, you should have all your skeletal minions back. But of course, once you have all your skeletal minions, you want to switch out decompose back to the other skill you had. So I put 1 point into decompose, a point into enhanced decompose, and a point into acolytes decompose. Now next for the core skills. Now this build doesn't use any core skills, but I did put 3 points into Hewed Flesh that states, lucky hit, your damage has up to a 12% chance to create a corpse at the target's location. This chance is doubled against bosses. This skill is important because we are building lucky hit, and creating more corpse is ideal for this build. Next for the corpse and macabre skills, I put 1 point into blood mist, a point into enhanced blood mist, and a point into ghastly blood mist. Now blood mist will be our invincibility skill, and since blood mist leaves a corpse, this skill is good for initiating and escaping enemies. And with our other skills and gear, you'll be able to always activate blood mist, making you invincible all the time. Next, I put 5 points into corpse explosion, a point into enhanced corpse explosion, and a point into blighted corpse explosion. And corpse explosion will be our main damage dealing skill, and with blighted corpse explosion, it'll turn our corpse explosion into a darkness skill, which will greatly benefit our other skills. And then I put 3 points into skeletal warrior mastery for the increased damage and life of your skeletal warriors. Now next for the curse skills, I put 1 point into Decryptify, 1 point into Enhanced Decryptify, and 1 point into Abhorrent Decryptify. Now because of the Decryptic aura of Malignant Heart, I don't need to put Decryptify in my skill slot, and I'll automatically apply Decryptify to all the enemies around me. And with the skill Abhorrent Decryptify, which states lucky hit, enemies hit while affected with Decryptify have up to a 15% chance to reduce your active cooldowns by 1 second. So with enough lucky hit, we can drastically reduce our cooldowns for our skills. And I put 3 points into Skeletal Mage Mastery for increased damage and life of your skeletal mages. Now for the next sets of Corpse and Macabre skills, I put a point into Corpse Tendrils, a point into Enhanced Corpse Tendrils, and a point into Plague Corpse Tendrils. And this skill is very important because it will pull and stun enemies while applying Vulnerable. And if you have the Barber Wrathful Malignant Heart, Corpse Tendril will always activate the Barber Wrathful Malignant Heart with this legendary aspect that increases your Corpse Tendril's critical strike chance. And next I put 3 points into Reaper's Pursuit. Now this build is designed around speed, so this will greatly increase our movement speed. I put 3 points into Gloom and 3 points into Terror, and this will increase our Darkness skill damage. And I put 1 point into Crippling Darkness, and this will give our Darkness skill a chance to stun enemies. I put 1 point into Necrotic Carapace, and this skill will give us Fortify for some extra defense. Now next for the ultimate skills, I put 1 point into Bone Storm, a point into Prime Bone Storm, and a point into Supreme Bone Storm. And this skill has good damage while giving us damage reduction and increasing our critical strike chance. Next I put 3 points into Golem Mastery to increase the damage and life of your golem. I put 3 points into Aspiring Ledger and 3 points into Hellbent Commander to increase our minions damage. And then I put 3 points into Death Defense to increase our minions survivability. And last but not least, for the key passive, I put a point into Shadow Blight for increased damage. And with this legendary aspect, I will greatly increase my damage for all my skills when the Shadow Blight key passive damages enemies 10 times. Okay, so next let's check out the Book of the Dead. So for the Skeletal Warriors, I went with Reapers. And the skill I chose is that Reapers have a chance to form Corpse. And of course, having Corpse is very important for this build. Next for the Skeletal Mages, I went with Shadow. And this will give our Skeletal Mages Darkness attacks, which will benefit from our other skills. And the skill I chose is that Shadow Mages have a chance to stun enemies. And having crowd control in any build is really good. And last but not least, for the Golem, I went Bone. And the skill I chose is that it will shed a corpse when the Bone Golem takes 20% damage. Now the reason I chose Bone Golem instead of Iron Golem is that the taunt is 6 seconds long. Now the Iron Golem does have a stun and can apply Vulnerable for 3 seconds, but having a 6-second taunt is so much better for this build because the 6-second taunt is so much longer compared to a 3-second stun, and the range of the Bone Golem's taunt covers the whole screen compared to the Iron Golem stun, which covers an AoE around your golem. Okay, so next let's check out the gear. And I'm just going to go over the most important stats for each piece of gear and the legendary aspect. But I'll have a D4 build planner in the description below with the best stats and legendary aspects you're looking for. So starting with the helmet. Now the best stat you're looking for on the helmet is cooldown reduction. And the legendary aspect I have is that your maximum number of skeletal mages is increased by 2. Now for the chest piece, you're looking for damage reduction. And the legendary aspect I have is that Blood Mist triggers corpse explosion on surrounding corpse. When Blood Mist detonates a corpse, its cooldown is reduced by 0.5 seconds, and this legendary aspect will reduce our Blood Mist cooldown. Now for the gloves, I'm using a unique glove called the Howl from Below, and its unique aspect is instead of detonating immediately, Corpse Explosion summons a volatile skeleton that charges at a random enemy and explodes. Corpse Explosion damage is increased by 40%. Now this unique glove is not mandatory, but it will greatly increase our Corpse Explosion damage. Now for the pants, you're looking for damage reduction, and the legendary aspect I have is that you gain armor every time you deal damage. Next for the boots. Now of course this is a speed build, so the main stat we're looking for is movement speed, and the legendary aspect I have is that your maximum number of skeletal warriors is increased by 2. Now for the weapon, I went with a two-handed sword for increased damage, and the stat you're looking for is critical strike damage and vulnerable damage, and the legendary aspect I have is that you deal 198% increased damage for 6 seconds after the Shadow Blight key passive damages enemies 10 times. Now this legendary aspect will greatly increase our damage. Next for the amulet. Now you're looking for movement speed and cooldown reduction, and the legendary aspect I have is that you gain a 30% increased critical strike chance for 6 seconds when you cast Corpse Tendrils. You deal 60% bonus critical strike damage to enemies damaged by Corpse Tendrils. Now because this greatly increased our critical strike chance for our Corpse Tendrils, every time I use Corpse Tendril, the Barber Wrathful Malignant Heart will activate and then unleash a ton of damage. Next for the rings. Now the first ring I have is a unique ring, and it's called the Ring of Mendel. And the most important stat we're looking for on the rings is lucky hit chance. And the unique aspect of this ring is that while you have 7 or more minions, you gain lucky hit, up to 10% chance to empower all your minions, causing the next attack from each to explode for 15,933 physical damage. Now this ring will greatly increase our minions damage. Now this unique ring is not mandatory for this build, so if you can't find this unique ring, try to find a ring similar to this ring I have right here. And for the next ring, the stat you're looking for is lucky hit chance, critical strike damage, and vulnerable damage. And the legendary aspect I have is that Blood Mist leaves a trail that lasts for 4 seconds and deals 1011 shadow damage per second to enemies who stand in it. Your movement speed is no longer reduced while Blood Mist is active. Now this will be one of the most important legendary aspects for this build. The reason why is making Blood Mist do shadow damage. Having Blood Mist do shadow damage will significantly increase the chance to activate this legendary aspect, which greatly increases our damage. So like I mentioned before, on our rings we do want as much lucky hit as possible, because with Abhorrent Decryptify, having lucky hit will greatly reduce our other skills cooldown, meaning that we can use Blood Mist almost all the time, which will make us invincible almost all the time. Now for the gems. So for the armor, you're looking to insert ruby gems for the increased maximum life, sapphire gems for the weapon for increased critical strike damage to crowd control enemies, and the 3 Malignant Heart you're looking for to use is the Sacrilegious Malignant Heart, the Decrypted Ura Malignant Heart, and the Barber Wrathful Malignant Heart. Okay, so next let's check out the Paragon board. Now I'm just going to quickly go over the important stats and the glyphs you're looking for this build, but I'll have the full Paragon board layout in a D4 build planner in the description below. So starting off with the starter board, the glyph I chose is Exploit for the increased vulnerable damage. Then I headed up this path, and the next Paragon board I took was Cult Leader, and the glyph I chose is Essence, which increases our critical strike damage. Then I went this way to get these rare nodes that will increase our minions damage and attack speed, and I did take the legendary node Cult Leader, which increases our minions damage. Then I headed this way, and for the next Paragon board I went with Scent of Death, and the glyph I'm using is Control, which increases our damage to crowd control enemies. I went this path and took the legendary node Scent of Death, which will either increase our damage reduction or increase our damage depending if there are corpses nearby. Now for this Paragon board I did take 2 paths. So first, going down, I took the Flesh Eater Paragon board, and the glyph I used is Amplify. Now this glyph will increase bonuses to our magic nodes, and the additional bonus is that enemies affected by curse skills take 10% increased damage from you and your minions. And I took the legendary node Flesh Eater, which grants 40% increased damage for 6 seconds after consuming 5 corpse. Now going back to our previous Paragon board and going up this way, I took the Wither Paragon board, and for the glyph I took Scourge, which will increase our shadow damage over time. And I also took the legendary node Wither, which increases our shadow damage over time. Okay, so that's pretty much an optimized Paragon board for this build. But one thing you want to look at is your rare nodes and make sure you're getting the bonus stats. So for example, this rare node needs 450 dexterity. So make sure you look at your stats on the side and try to get the bonuses for the rare nodes. And like I mentioned before, I will have the full Paragon board layout in a D4 build planner in the description below. Alright, so thanks for checking out the fastest AFK mass minion build for dungeon farming and leveling. Now just be aware that this build focuses on speed and not damage or defense, so this build is not optimized for the highest tier nightmare dungeons or fighting Uber Lilith. But with this build you should be able to easily level up to level 100 quickly, or farm for the gear you're looking for. Hope this helps, and more Diablo 4 videos to come, so stay tuned. And of course,